Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Trusted, timely, tradition. The unspoken truth about pests on U.S. Farm Report. Brought to you by AgriSure Traits. Combine the power of AgriSure Duracade plus AgriSure Viptera trait stacks to control 16 yield-damaging above and below ground pests.
Well, last week we talked about the crucial role weather plays with pest pressure each year. But what are the pests possibly coming to a field near you? It's the unspoken truth about pests this weekend on U.S. Farm Report. Scouting for pests is part of the job for agronomist Mark Eads.
The feeding can often be mistaken for flea beetle feeding in corn.
This year, it isn't insects giving farmers fits, it's slugs.
Slugs are actually not an insect. They're a gastropod, so they are a shellless snail. They do most of their damage in the early part of the growing season.
No-till or minimum-till fields with plenty of cover, combined with cool spring weather, set up parts of northern Indiana for major slug damage.
I have seen a field not too far from where we're standing right now that was replanted 4 times.
In the western Corn Belt,
I think it's easier.
Farm farmland has been no-till for decades, and the reduction in tillage practices has actually helped with insect control.
It's very easy to just control insects through. If we need to, we can run it with our ground rig, and then on the no-till side.
From no-till to conventional tillage, farmers across Illinois are seeing one particular pest pop up more.
One of those insects that we're seeing more of, and I don't really know the reason why, is wireworm. We're dealing with more wireworm every year.
Farm Journal agronomist Ken Ferry says the issue is also a problem in fields farmers were forced to replant.
And the population seemed to be building, or we find more fields with wireworm issues.
Ferry says the reason remains a mystery, but up-and-coming pest pressure is something Ferry continues to watch.
The other insect that we do see more of each year in Illinois is the northern rootworm beetle. It used to be more of an Iowa-Wisconsin bug, and it seems to be moving in, especially in the northern parts of the state, and we'll have to be dealing with that as those pressures build.
As certain pest pressures build, Farm Journal agronomist Missy Bauer says it's often geography-based.
I think it depends really where you're at. I mean, certainly like here in Michigan, we're dealing with western bean cutworm way more than we used to. 10 years ago, we didn't hardly have to deal with it all. Now it's something, an every year thing we're paying attention to.
There's another emerging issue happening in fields that tend to be sandier.
Asiatic garden beetle is another new emerging pest for us here in Michigan. Likes the sandier soils and really can cause problems in young corn and emerging corn, feeding on corn roots and give you a lot of unevenness out there in the fields.
From soil type to seed type, there are other factors fueling insect populations and problems.
We do have corn borer building in the areas where guys have moved to the non-BT market for market premiums. And if we do that for a series of years, we start to see corn borer pressures build in those areas.
As seed companies invest in more modes of action, it's helping with even the pest problems popping up in BT fields.
Many of the corn earworm in the South have become resistant to the types of BT that are used to manage them. So not only are we getting influxes of corn earworm, we're getting influxes of BT-resistant corn earworm.
A constant focus in research and development that may be always needed.
And that's a very important point in general for people to keep in mind. Nature always finds a way around our management strategies.
But as traits continue to evolve to help farmers combat pests, Bauer says there are insects that farmers no longer battle every year.
I'd say one pest we used to deal with, especially when I first started my career, European corn borer. And I wouldn't say that we never have it. Some people have conventional corn, and if you have conventional corn, you still need to be out there and scouting it. But where so much corn is traded now, that seems to be one thing we just don't have to deal with very often. So I would say European corn borer, really because of the genetics and the traits of what's come through the platforms.
From genetics and traits to a change in production methods on farms across the country, pest problems can create financial woes.
If the pressure is high enough where they're actually causing economic damage, you're going to be able to find them.
Even as agronomists like Eads continue to battle pests, both known and unknown each year.
So the chances of this happening are actually very low, but the chances of having to maybe do a replant, do something like that, it is increased, but not significantly.
Well, earlier on the show, Matt Bennett had advice if you're a farmer and can sell corn above $5 at the elevator. But does Dan Huber agree? That's next.